Hola amigos, it's me Paul and I'm here in Bucerias, Nayarit, Mexico, and today I'm going to share with you a story about the time that I got scammed at the Mexican border in Nogales. So while I'm telling that story, I'm going to walk through this neighborhood here in Bucerias. It's the Los Picos neighborhood, so vámonos. Now, I've driven across the border many times without any problems. But the time I got scammed was actually the very first time I crossed the border by car. This was back in 2016. Myself and my companion Betty left Salinas, California, heading to Bucerias, Nayarit, Mexico. The plan was to stop over in San Diego for my friend's wedding, and then on to Tucson, Arizona to spend the night in a cheap hotel where I would wake up very early the next day and cross the border and drive to the next stop, Hermosillo, Sonora. Keep in mind that back in 2016, there was information online on how to drive across the border, but there wasn't as an abundance of resources as there is now. So for someone like me, there was still a bit of mystery to crossing the border. So fast forward to the morning of the border crossing. And I remember as we approached the border, we were literally the only car at the border. So it was just us crossing into Mexico that morning. I could see some border agents kind of hanging out, talking to each other. And as I pulled in, they all kind of kicked it into gear. And so they began asking me the normal questions. Where are you headed? How long are you staying? And I presented my passport and I was able to go into the office to get my tourist visa for 180 days. Since I was driving a truck with California plates and I was driving deeper into Mexico, I would need to get a permit for my truck. And so the office is located south of Nogales on kilometer 21. It was at this point that a border agent approached me and asked if I was going to get the permit for my truck. And so I told him yes. And he said, okay, I can go with you and show you where it is. He presented his badge and said he does this all the time. The other border agents were nearby, and when I looked at them, and they really didn't have any indication that anything odd was happening. So I thought to myself, this is a little weird, but why not, since the border agents maybe do this? So being my first time, I didn't realize that, this wasn't normal. Big mistake. Never let anyone into your car, especially at the border in Mexico. If my initial instinct that this was a little weird wasn't enough, when the agent entered the car, Betty began growling at this guy. I looked at him and said, she's normally friendly, but for whatever reason, she doesn't like you. So that was a big red flag that I ignored, and always trust your dog. But I didn't kick the guy out, and I went against my better judgment, and we made our way to kilometer 21. So now we're driving through Nogales, when we're just kind of chatting, but as we're chatting, I noticed that I could smell alcohol on this guy's breath. And so I became even more suspicious of the situation. And so, first it was me thinking that this was a little weird. Then I had Betty growling, and now I smell alcohol on this guy's breath. So at this point, I definitely know something is not right. So probably one of the more intelligent things I did that day was that I took out my phone and I took a picture of this guy and sent it to my mom. And I did it in a way that, he saw me do it too. My thinking was that now this guy knows that there's a photo of him somewhere, and so if anything happens to me, the authorities will be looking for him. So we safely arrived to kilometer 21, and I was ready to part ways with this guy. But he insisted that he would help me with my paperwork and get through the process. So now I had this guy following me around, basically pretending to help me. And at one point, I had to make a copy of my driver's license with the immigration office, and the agent charged me 50 pesos to make the copy, and then he accidentally, on purpose, printed the picture too large, and so he had to print it again. And so that was another 50 pesos. And so at this point I was super frustrated because I knew what was going on. I looked around at the people working there and was pretty pissed off and my stress level was skyrocketing. and I realized I was basically buying everybody lunch that day. So then we moved on to another kiosk where I had to have a document approved, and I don't really remember what it was, but there was a lady working there, and she was looking at me and she was looking at this guy, and he was, a few feet away. And so she said very quietly, when he's not paying attention, that this man is not good. He is a bad person. And she was very careful when she was telling me this. And so, I knew that this guy was already a scammer, but how careful this lady was being when she told me this was a bit unsettling, because it's like she was very worried that he would hear her. Maybe she just didn't want to have the confrontation, who knows? So after that, I knew this had been dragging on too long and I needed to part ways with this guy right now. So a little while later, I took out 500 pesos, handed it to the guy, and said, "Thanks for your help today. I'll take it from here." So right away, he began to tell me how, I wasted his time and 500 pesos wasn't enough for his services. And, I was already pissed off. My stress level was high. And I raised my voice and I said, "This is plenty of money for what you did, for the services that you provided today. Thank you very much. Have a nice day." And he began to argue with me again and trying to make me feel guilty. And I just wasn't having it. And I told him 500 pesos is more than you should get. So after I told him that, he got really pissed off and he dramatically took the money and tore it in half and put it in the garbage. So it was right around the same time that, we parted ways that I noticed that the border agent who, was talking to me at the border that morning, he arrived to pick this guy up. So the way that this scam works is this border agent, the actual border agent, allows this fake border agent to run this scam on unsuspecting travelers. And so, he then picks him up later and says, "Okay, how much money did you make?" And they probably split the winnings or however they work it out. So despite all of this, I was able to get my permit for my truck, and I continued my journey south towards Hermosillo. And, for the next 2 hours after that, I was kind of checking my mirrors. You never know who these people are. And it was nerve-wracking. And, looking back, I'm happy that nothing too bad happened to me. I mean, I was scammed out of 500 pesos, basically. And I guess it didn't really work. The scam didn't really work for them that morning with me. But it did just raise my stress level. It was a horrible feeling, like the first time, driving into Mexico. So the moral of the story, trust your dog, trust your initial instinct, and never let somebody into your truck, into your car, especially at the Mexican border. I think that they take advantage of naive solo travelers who are acting too friendly, too nice, too agreeable. And which is why in another video, I recommend that in some situations, it's not your best interest to be overly friendly, because some people take that kindness as weakness. And one commenter said that he goes into what he calls business mode. He's not there to make friends. You shouldn't be trying to make friends at the border. It should just be all business. Here's my documents. Everything's good. Time to go. So I would say that it's worth putting on a bit of a game face and go into business mode. Even if it's your first time crossing the border, you're excited, you're eager to please and comply with the Mexican government, but just be polite, but don't be overly friendly. So that's my story about the time I got scammed. Have you ever been scammed at the border or run into any weird situations at the border? Comment below, I want to hear your stories. And like I said, this is the one and only time something like this happened to me. I've been pulled over by police driving through Mexico. They want to check who you are, check what's going on, why you have these plates. But honestly, they're not scamming me. They're not asking for bribes. And the rest of my trips have been good. So it's it's the one and only time, and I think that it's just because they targeted me as a naive solo traveler. So you definitely don't want to cross the border how I did that day. You want to cross the border the correct way. Here are some of my best practices. Click on this video, crossing the border the right way. Thank you once again for watching today's video. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. De mi familia a la tuya, Dios te bendiga.